have to say, we have to be real careful about like what we're saying, because the world is listening to us.
Because it gets parodied.
Yes.
I understand. I understand.
But
I uh-huh.
but my question, I
Okay,
got,
let's get to your question. I'm
sorry, I'm
sorry.
so sorry. My question for you was, I work since being in China, I really got into this place of zen and peace and tranquility with self.
Yeah.
And I wanted to know what you thought of the protests, and the languaging, because I went to the March on Washington, and one of the things that I noticed was the dialogue. It was like prosecute the police, but my thing was, and then what? Like, how are we fixing and healing our mindsets as Black people? How are we healing? And I started chanting a different chant, and I was like, believe, achieve, we can make a change. Because I
Absolutely.
don't want
Absolutely.
to shout out like all of this. I don't like shouting out negativity. I want everything to be pushed. Like, I
Yeah.
understand the circumstance, but like, we have to really push these high vibrational stuff so they can't even touch us.
Yeah. I think it's a mixture of all. I think that like any society or any organization, I think you're going to have some frontline warriors, which we've had, and I'd like to acknowledge ones recently, the skateboard culture. Kids who ride skateboards, black, white, Asian, and indifferent, have literally put their skateboards up as a shield versus the cop shield to protect people. So that's something I've never seen, and I think that's absolutely beautiful. I think that your notion of vibrating high is a very valid thing. I think we should. I think that any movement, like the sixth Kingian step of King and nonviolence, should seek reconciliation. And his goal of beloved community was not a utopia where everybody was just okay. It was one in which everyone sought greater understanding and higher vibration. Sometimes you got to go out in the streets and fuck some shit up, though, to let them know that I can vibrate high and low. So I don't castigate any protester or rioter or
Right.
looter. I, like you, are just like, what do we do after? And
Yeah.
my opinion, what we do after is plot, plan, strategize, organize, and mobilize. That's not just setting up to do a riot. I heard Afeni Shakur say that they asked her about Black liberation and the Black liberation movement and the violence. She said, I think that we left out spirituality. Um, it was
Yes.
it was her or Sada, I think it was her. And as a young man, I wanted to be a warrior, and I am a warrior. But if you're a warrior that doesn't know how to garden, the people you're protecting will die of hunger. And what I had to learn and know and understand is that the old adage that says, is the student was saying to the master, if I'm a warrior, why do you have me working in the garden? Or if I'm and he essentially was telling him that, you rather be a warrior in the garden than a gardener in a time of war. And I think that we need to have that balance. We need to know how to vibrate high so we know what we're fighting for. I'm not fighting to beat evil. I'm fighting to be good.
Amen.
If a lot, oftentimes, and Hampton made this note about educating all the people, you'll replace a dictator with another dictator in the matter of being convenient,
Hmm.
versus understanding that, truly the temptation when you become powerful is to put others in the place of where you always saw them, versus creating a community where everyone can truly thrive and be empowered. So I'm with you on that, on the vibrating high thing. I just think that there is some need for both. There is a need for violence. There is a need for upset and rage. And after that, after you win the war, who's going to take care of organizing? Who's going to make sure these babies grow up self-confident? Who's going to plant our food? So I think that in the revolution, we need to understand that the revolutionary is a teacher,
Hmm.
is a farmer, is
Hmm.
a producer, is a business person, is a warrior. And they're all points of the revolution, and we need it all. So you are as important to the revolution as my friends with 15 AR-15s and 10,000 rounds, you know? And I
Amen.
would argue more so because you are a part of what grows strong and confident children. And like Frederick Douglass said, it's easier to build strong children than it is to repair broken men.
Amen. Thank you so much. I
I,
was
I appreciate you.
say this is a, I think a lot of people like spread love, but also I think people need to remember the Jesus in the temple moment, and that's
Yeah, yeah, like bitch, we're tired to shit over.
yeah.
And I want to tell all the Christians out there, Jesus is mentioned more in the Quran than maybe even the Bible. So y'all might
Right.
want to fellowship with some Muslims because they know a lot about that guy Jesus, man. I think you guys would be interested to hear that.
Thank you
Love,
so
sister.
much for choosing me.
I
Have a
appreciate you. Love and respect. Have a good day.
love and respect.
First, you tell us that it is manly to keep your word. All right? If you are a man, you keep your word. And now all that the black people in this country are demanding, and even the black people in the whole world are demanding, is that you keep your word. You told us we were free. Well, then show us that we're free. You told us that there is justice, equality for all in this country. Well, then stick to your word and let us see the justice and equality for all. Or else admit to us that you're not a man, you're a worm, you're afraid of us, you're afraid to give us equal stand. You're afraid that if you give us equal ground, that we will match you and we will override you. And if that's what you're afraid of us, then tell us that just what you're afraid of. But don't keep hiding it from us and holding this up to us, and every time we ask you for something, you give us a little bit of something, and it's all tokenism. We don't want tokenism. And there are most black men in this world that don't want charity. And yet still every time we ask you for something, you give us a little piece, a little piece. You're playing games with us. We're not children. We're big men. I've seen my father have to put up with all kinds of stuff. He was a big man. He raised a family. He went down south, and he had to go around to the back door with his wife. We're not asking for anything. We're not asking for any favors. All we want is what's ours. Now, there are many black veterans who are coming back, and they're mad. They're angry. Do you think that they're going to sit down through this? Our fathers didn't have the knowledge that we have. They sat through it. But there are other black youth that are not going to sit through it. We know about Che. We know about Fanon. We've read the books of our revolution. We've listened to Mao and his quotations. We know where we stand. We're not going to sit for it. We're asking, and if we ask and we don't get, we're prepared to stand up and take it. If I ask a man, I tell a man I am hungry. I tell him I am cold. And I ask him to do something about my condition. And this man holds a loaf of bread right in front of me so I can see it, and I keep asking him, I'm begging him to please give me a slice of the loaf of bread. I am hungry. Then it is known by every psychologist that the next step in the progression is I am going to knock him upside the head and take the bread from him. I'm not going to starve to death. All we're asking, no one wants to see blood. No one likes the smell of blood. No one wants war. Anyone who's been in war doesn't want war. Everyone knows what it is to see the inside of a man's gut hanging out and see your friends die, see relatives die. No one wants to regress back to the state of mind where you have to think it's all for the cause, therefore my mother has to die, my wife has to die, my brothers and sisters have to die. No one wants that. But you're pushing us to it. You're leaving us no choice. We're asking, we're begging. The students up at Columbia, they ask. The brothers down south ask. The brothers in Latin America, the brothers in Africa, they're all asking. All they're doing is asking. Our fathers asked. Our grandfathers asked. The presidents of our universities, our colleges had to go to your back doors to beg that their children be given just enough money so that they could be taught something to live off. And yet still, they ask and ask and ask, and you refuse to give them anything. Now, we're just about out of patience. We're not going to ask anymore. The news media says that it's only the young that are militant, only the young that want this and want that. Okay, but we're 40% of the black population now. Or we were a year ago, and still yet we're climbing. Before long, we'll be 50%, 55%, and then we'll have the command. We're not going to take it. We're not going to take sitting in rotten parks and in places that just aren't fit for living. We're not going to take it. There's a limit to a man's patience, and everyone knows that God, Christ, heaven, everyone knows that what we're asking is not $1 million. All we're asking for is humanity. We're asking to be allowed to live like human beings. And God, you tell us that this is too much to ask. You're sick. You're definitely sick. How can you tell me that it's too much to ask to be a human being?